And then I joined the church, and then the fellowship closed. And I went over there. The meeting is being recorded. Only.
That's me. I did it. I pushed the button.
Oh, you did it. Okay. I don't have to do anything. Okay.
Yeah. No, you're good.
You're making it easy for me. This is good. I need some help.
Try. I try.
Yeah. I try on the other end too. And I do have, I'm touch, so I can move it and get it bigger and, but.
I see we have people starting to gather. We have about 10 participants who have started to gather.
Okay.
Folk who are gathering, we're going to start in about 3 minutes. But if you're someone who was a family or close friend of Bishop Herzfeld, type it in the chat, and then I will give you a voice in the conversation so that people can share some stories. So I just wanted to give you that heads up that you can let me know, and we'll add more voices to the story. All right. So two more minutes and we'll do our official beginning.
Then we won't tell any stories.
Yeah, then no fun stories.
No secrets.
Yeah, always good to know when you're not telling secrets.
Yeah. And where are you, at your house?
Yep, live from the living room is what we call it when we do church.
Okay.
We didn't want to have like stained glass windows and fancy stuff, because if it looked like I was sneaking out of the house, then other people might think they could sneak out of the house. So we've just set up the living room.
That's good.
It keeps one portion of the house immaculately clean.
Well, yeah, that's
what you need.
I'm in the corner of the bedroom.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know why good pastor ethics shows not their bedroom to other people, right?
I know, but I'm not a pastor. Yeah, the ethics kind of go out the window these days.
Thank you to everybody who's gathering. I'm keeping an eye out in case anyone else pops on from our panel and doesn't have their photo up too.
Okay. See Ken? I haven't seen him.
I don't see him yet.
Probably Will's funeral or something like that.
Yeah. I'll pull up my phone in case they need to let me know when they pop on too.
Okay.
I'm gonna start doing a couple of logistics so that people know how the room works, and then if more people want to pop onto the conversation, we can do that. Sound good? What was that, Joe?
Am I supposed to click this continue thing?
Sure, yeah, click continue.
What's that? Not leave meeting. Anyway, I've got this thing in front of your face that says this meeting is being recorded.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to our town halls that prioritize the voices of intersectional Lutherans, co-sponsored by Just Lutheran and the Racial and Ethnic Ministry Strategy Discipling Team of the Sierra Pacific Synod. I'm Pastor Megan Rohrer, and I'll be sharing some of the information to start off with about how this Zoom webinar works. First of all, most people do not have video or microphone access because we're using the webinar format. This means that those presenting today are the ones who have their microphone and camera on, although unlike our previous conversations, we're inviting people who have personal experiences or relationships with Bishop Will Herzfeld to send me a note in the chat or text or email me, and then I will give you voice and video camera access so that you can chat with people today. Tonight's conversation will begin with moderated questions and open up to questions from the audience. So if you would like to ask questions, you can type them in the Q&A section if you are on our Zoom webinar, or you can use hashtag LutheransListen if you are in the Facebook live stream. If you'd like to share additional wisdom, share book resources with each other, you can do that in the chat room section. This webinar is being recorded and will be available both on Facebook and at justlutheran.com under online trainings and curriculums. At the end of the town hall, if you would like to participate in the evaluation survey, a link will pop up on Zoom. And if you registered for the webinar, you should get an email that will come to you tomorrow, where you can let us know how we did. If you want to review any of these logistics, I'll post them in the chat box. And before we begin, I want to acknowledge that town halls are a leap of faith, and especially for today's town hall when technology is hard for the people who are sharing stories. Expect that there might be some technology hiccups. There might be one or two people we're hoping will pop into the meeting that aren't here yet, and we'll just do the best we can and have the conversations that present themselves in front of us, however they come. So as I try to see if Jennifer or Ken are here to pop them into the room, Joe, would you introduce yourself to folk who might not know you?
Sure. I'm Joe Chadwick, and I like to share 4 things about Will with you that way you'll know me. We started the West Coast Lutheran Council office in 1970. In 1976, I went to become a member of Bethlehem Lutheran Church for 10 years until the AELC became the LCA. And then I went to ELCA as the Commission for Women executive, and Will followed me in global missions. And then we were together there until he died.
Thank you.
That gives me the Will Herzfeld side of me.
That's right. You also wear a lot of other hats as well. Again, for folk who are joining us, if you knew Will, just let me know in the chat, and I will pop you to have voice into this conversation so that others can share. Shall I play the video that we made of Will's voice?
That's a good idea.
So that some people can hear what he was about. Hold on one second, and I will put that up right now. Here we go.
I'm Will Herzfeld, and I'm pastor of Bethlehem Lutheran Church in Oakland. Bethlehem Church is a member of the Association of Evangelical Lutheran Churches. In addition to doing those kinds of things, I have other responsibilities in the church, some of which are new, at least beginning in September, when I will join Drs. Preuss and Crumley as one of the 3 presiding bishops of the church. We hope until the new church begins. Major issues, so that we're all at rest on this, will not prevent the new Lutheran Church from being born. There is no issue, in my opinion, which will prevent the beginning of the new Lutheran Church. In other words, all of the struggles that we might have between now and 1988 will not prevent the new church from being born. There will be problems and issues unresolved, waiting for the new church to begin and waiting for the new church to solve them.
The Evangelical Lutheran Church in America actually has a genesis that extends itself beyond, that is backwards in time, the event at Columbus. That is when the 3 presiding bishops carried these, some of you have seen the pictures, these 45-pound water jugs to the baptismal font and began pouring. And then, you know, people have reminded me that the expression on my face was an expression that said something like, I may get a hernia. You think about these 45-pound water jugs, and you figure that this particular symbolic act was designed for a 6'8" Aryan, and not a 5'7" black person?
Well, the first racist act can be dated from the removal of the first Native American from his plot of ground. And this racist act set off, like the domino theories, the expansion of white people westward from Jamestown all the way to Vietnam. The United States established and maintained for nearly 250 years the most brutal and dehumanizing slave system that the world has ever known, including those that I'm able to read about in biblical times, based exclusively on race. American slavery caused the nation to be established on the principle that all men are created equal, to write a constitution defining slaves as 3/5 of a man. You've heard all that before from Leon and a couple of others. The slave trade itself was genocidal in that unknown millions of men, women, and children died en route here. Like much of American society, racism is a matter of subtle and not so subtle euphemism. An elaborate rhetoric exists to disguise it, much of which you have heard here already if you have been listening from yourselves. What does it mean for a person to be the black sheep in a family? Is it true that only the good guys wear white hats? What color is devil's food cake? What color do we talk about when we talk of death? All American white institutions are racist, or more accurately, white supremacist, and all operate to perpetuate white privilege. Some do more vigorously than others. Some manifest it differently. Some are more strategically located than others. You see, institutionalized anonymous racism means that many whites do not discriminate in any direct, overt way. Now, the inability or unwillingness of white people to recognize racism is aggravated further by the lack of a tradition of systemic analysis or understanding of any social phenomenon. Now, I believe that. Thus, the Horatio Alger myth, which Brother Tweet talked a little bit about when he was reading from Mad Magazine this morning, combined with the Protestant ethic, decrees that failure by whites as well as blacks is either the fault of the individual or the work of God as a punishment for sin. In either case, the problem is an individual one. The more whites see of the conditions in which black people live, the more they tend to be convinced that this is what black people want or deserve. White Americans do not know who they are because since 1607 and before, they have constructed an identity that depends primarily on who they are not. Because of this, they have brutalized not only men and women of color, but perhaps irrevocably themselves as well. The black church was conceived in Africa. It was born in slavery in America. The black church's emergence came as a result of black Africans being stripped of their heritage and enslaved mostly by white Christian persons. We affirm whatever methods they decide best in their particular situation and make no pious and hypocritical judgment which condemn those efforts to bring an end to their oppression, recognizing that we in this country have ourselves been compelled to make similar choices and may be so compelled again. Because of racism and imperialism, domestic and foreign, we black people are an international community of outlaws and aliens in our respective homelands and in those communities where we have chosen or been forced to reside. The loving servanthood of the black church has been and is today an inescapable necessity. Therefore, we do not reject the disinherited, for they are us. We do not reject the disenfranchised, for they are us. Rather, we embrace all of God's children who hunger and thirst for justice and human dignity. We rededicate and recommit ourselves and the black churches in whose leadership we participate to the struggle for freedom from injustice, racism, and oppression. This we declare to be the essential meaning of black theology as defined by those who conceived it, nurture it, and affirm it as a source of inspiration and reflective action for all black people and for all of the exploited and oppressed peoples of the world who are grasped by its truth for their situation. I'm told to say, whenever I conclude statements like this, to all persons, welcome to the Black Church. We will be pleased to baptize you, except that this time it may be by immersion, even for Luther.
So that is a video that I put together using some archived talks from Bishop Herzfeld's lectures at Holden Village. And I will put a link in the chat room portion that will be a place where people can check into some more of those lectures if they're interested in hearing now. Martin, I made it so that if you would like to share stories, you are able to. Let me also go through the thing and see if we have a couple more people who have popped on who might be interested in sharing some stories. Joe, how did you first start working for Bishop Herzfeld?
The Lutheran Council decided to have an office on the West Coast, and at that point I was without a job. And so Herb David and Will Herzfeld established the office in the Urban Life Center here at St. Mark's, right next to where I live right now. So it haunts me. What I wanted to say, though, was two things from the video. One is the one with the men, and they were all men marching in south of Market, arm in arm. That's south of Market is there to go see. It's quite amazing when you think about that. And the other is the last paragraph that he repeated like he had memorized and used every long word he ever heard. That's part of his gift, because in his mind, we did not, as I'm living a little bit of this week, my friends. So you're getting a little bit of what's been going on. And I thought of him because he always, and I don't know if anybody from Bethlehem is here, but you always start a church on time. You did not have colored people time at Bethlehem. And part of it is because you have to listen to that long sermon. And he uses many long words as he could find and look them up in the dictionary also to find them. So I wanted to comment on that.
That's really great. I once was preaching at Bethlehem Lutheran in West Oakland, and I preached everything I thought I was going to preach that day, and then they shouted at me, "You ain't done!" And they had me talk for another 20 minutes. And I was grateful because they were right. I wasn't done. The best part of the sermon was what came out next. And so I've always been really grateful for them being so completely in the spirit like that. And so, Martin and Renee, if you're interested, I gave you permission that you can unmute if you'd like to share any stories as well. I'm continuing to look and see if I don't see Jennifer or Kenneth here yet, but I'll let them in once I see them. What was the vibe like? What is it like? Can you speak to this, Joe, to be a bishop of a denomination that kind of exists for the purpose of merging the Lutheran Church together? That's kind of
always said you'll get my politics. We would not have had the merger had we not had AELC and the leaders from AELC. The small church did the leading. And so when I look at the picture with the urns, and that picture is not always shown because we don't always have Will's picture in the picture. So that's a little bit of the political, what does it mean to be Black in 87? And now, well, I think we heard a lot about that in the last time. So it was when he became bishop here, that people at Bethlehem, you didn't get paid to be bishop of the AELC, and the congregation decided, what will we do so he can do this? And I taught a 4th grade Sunday school class. So that was, you know, kind of, it was not an easy road, but one with support from many communities as today. And yeah, yeah. But then he came back when came back to global missions, and that's really his special work for the ELCA for those years as he ordained women in Africa. And we think that part of why he was well at the end was that he had been there and that he had contacted malaria. And so that's another piece of his who he is.
Renee, do you have any stories you want to add?
Sure. I'm driving, so I apologize. I can't see you all, and if I go out, it'll be because I got to the house and I'll switch back in. But when I met Dad, he was already a bishop, so I don't have any memories prior to that. And I just remember the joy of seeing him come through here as he flew out of the country and stopping, and how he would always stop to see not only Martin and I, but when we had children, he would stop to see his granddaughters, and he would bring them special little mementos from the places he had been. Some of them would be things that were from the countries he'd been in, and some of them would be like ringing toothbrushes so that when they actually got teeth, they could brush them. So really fond memories of Dad, and I wish we had had more time together.
I heard a lot of noises of children in the background while he was speaking. Was any of that you guys, or was that other people's children? Did you get to go to Holden Village?
We did go to Holden Village once, Martin and I, but we didn't have children at that time when we went. We went once. That was an experience.
I bet. I bet.
When Will went to hold the lectures that you have, Will went to Holden Village. Those were given at that time. And if Renee and the kids are on, I took care of the kids, and they called it the Rezabam in those days. So they could go up and do the lectures. I stayed home, took care of kids.
Nice.
And so much of the reading that I did about Bishop Herzfeld was that he was one of these pioneers in the creation of Black theology, obviously, you know, having so much centeredness in Selma and with MLK. What did you guys grow up feeling like there was a Black Lutheran tradition, or what was that like?
I don't know.
It's okay. It's just something I was curious about. I didn't know if he spent a lot of time traveling and teaching at a lot of primarily white congregations, or if you felt like you were immersed in the Black community. I was just curious about that.
That would have to be a Kathy or Martin question, because I wasn't around then.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was gone a lot.
Oh, I think Kathy's here now. I'll pop her in. There we go. It's so nice to have you all here, by the way. Are there any stories that people have that feels like what part of what I thought was really good timing is I picked the timing to talk about Bishop Herzfeld because of his birthday being June 9th. And then here we are where the world kind of is feeling the same as the 60s and the civil rights. I wondered if you all had any stories from the past that you thought might speak to moments like these.
So this is his daughter. I'm Catherine Herzfeld by Inte. And the story that I can share mostly in times like this and how we grew up is my father was very clear on picking a struggle. So it's like you can pick, for me it was you can pick being a woman and you can deal with that struggle. You can pick dealing with a Black American in this world and you can deal with that struggle, or you can choose to deal with your surname and fight for the rights for Jewish Americans in this country to get their just due. So even very early growing up, and then growing up in his mind, growing up Herzfeld was about choosing that struggle and making sure that whatever struggle you committed yourself to, that's where you were. And he shared that message not only with his immediate children, he also shared that with all of his nieces and nephews, each of which had to still pick and choose what's going to be that struggle. What is that thing that I'm going to champion?
Mm-hmm.
So as we're in this environment now, it's refreshing, and I think very on point for you to bring this forward, because this was his ultimate wish, was continuing the work of MLK, continuing of the work of all of the pioneers that had gone before him, to really get to that point where people are people.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter where you sit, where you stand, how you pray, how you eat, and who you love, it's about being the best that you can be. So I'm honored, and I felt very privileged to grow up in an environment where I definitely had to choose what I was going to work on, because nothing came for free, but really about making that commitment and seeing it through. And it's times like this where you go back to that core, and you really want to focus in and dial in on what is that mission, why am I here, and how can I help make it better. So I applaud you for bringing that message forward, mostly at a time where I think a lot of people need to hear that voice, hear that reassurance that, you know, we're going through this, it's coming back up again, and we have yet an opportunity to beat that challenge.
Thank you. What out of curiosity did you pick a issue?
I did pick an issue. I chose the Black struggle. So I chose that as my challenge, and my whole goal in life is to change perception. So you can imagine walking into the room when nobody's ever seen you, being Catherine Herzfeld, and the surprises I got on job interviews when they called out my name. And I know Rena Mom had a lot of fun with me when we would go places, and she would be with me, and people were quite perplexed that I was calling her mom. So we had so for that part, it was all about, and it stills for me, changing perception. I want people to still be surprised and still be amazed when they see me, and be comfortable enough to ask the question and say, okay, so what's this all about? And then I'm happy to help them understand and be clear about who I am, how I came to be, and why it's, you know, so important to not judge a book by its cover.
Yeah. Do you have any stories that pop into your mind that resonate with today, Joe?
Did you address me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm still listening to Kathy.
Do you have any stories from the 60s that remind you of the struggle that's going on today?
Oh. Yeah, it was it's the brutalness and the stories you could tell that were never told. And I always used to say about all the issues, since I've had to be work on a number of issues in my life, it isn't until white people get involved that we heard about Black people. And I used to, and the same with gay and lesbian. Straight people got involved, something happened. So I watched as these young people in these last few days were out there marching. They were, they were getting who they are, as Kathy was talking about. I think they were getting a chance to see who they are, and that but the brutal stuff is, and then discovering the police stuff, that was not such an issue. I mean, it was in the South, and Will's early life stories are really very interesting, and they're not mine to tell, but a lot of our older Black pastors know those stories. I grew up in Alabama, and
No.
I think a dog's in trouble.
You guys aren't on the webinar with your grandpa's tribute? It's on right now. Your dad got
They should
on.
get on the
Thinking you're
webinar.
on, and Kathy just got finished talking.
That's right.
Oh, shoot.
You're good. You're fine.
well, I'm hoping that this time we're still around, some of the elders, although Megan has to march for me now, so she'll be out there marching. But yeah, it's time, friends. It's time.
Yeah.
Go
Is there
back
any?
and read Will's theology. It's right on time. Right on time.
Yeah. My hunch is I'm not the only person in this room who gets phone calls every once in a while that say I need to march for Auntie Joe. Martin, did you have any thoughts?
My issue, yeah, this is Martin. My
Hi,
issue.
Marty.
Hi, hi. My issue is climate change with solar energy and energy storage systems.
Yeah.
So
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I've been in the industry working on it for the last 15 years. Yeah.
Do you have any memories of your dad that you'd like to share?
He was very cool. Yeah, and he always used to talk about the quality of time as opposed to the quantity of time.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's right.
So I'd like to thank you for this and for remembering, for having it. Thank you.
I'm always surprised that he's not better known throughout the Lutheran Church, because I think his voice seemed to be very strong at the time, and he seemed to be such a prophet that when I was listening to his talks at Holden Village, so many of them felt like they were even farther than we were advocating for right now, that I kind of wished that he was here to kind of provoke us into being the prophets that we ought to be. And so I can't commend enough for people to listen to his lectures. They're just really wonderful. The video that I showed at the beginning is about 8 different lectures, kind of parts that I thought I could weave together into a story, but they really are, each one is kind of a separate journey.
You know, Megan, the reason that we don't necessarily know a story, one is we're from the West, and in this church, and also he came out of the Missouri Synod, which was one of the church bodies that merged. But the good news about the Missouri Synod is that they don't ordain women, so I have a problem there. But they had missionaries in the South, and they had schools, and then that's how we got some of the Black leaders that we got, what I could name, and this is the language he uses, but we don't always want to hear those stories, and I've told you this, and I'll tell especially those children there, that if you don't tell the story, we're bound to repeat it. And here's an example today, talking about Will, about how we got here. And I guess so it's our job.
That's right. That's right. And I'll make the announcement again kind of throughout is that folk who knew Bishop Herzfeld personally or have stories they want to share, you can just let me know in the chat, and then I can make it so that you can be a part of the conversation. Some people are choosing to share their videos. Some people are not choosing to share their videos because let's just be real, technology differences exist in different parts of our world and different age groups and different socioeconomic statuses. It's not a thing, not everyone wants to have their video on and be chatting, but I'm grateful for all of the storytelling. Leanne, do you have any stories you'd like to tell? And correct me if I'm mispronouncing anyone's names. I'm doing it just by reading the.
Nah, you said it completely right.
Okay, good.
One, I never really met my grandfather, but I know a lot about him because of my family, and like especially because of my father. Literally throughout my whole entire life, whenever there was like a topic that we needed to talk about, whether it involves history or anything, I always ask my dad, can I talk about grandpa? Like, I want to talk about him, because even though I haven't met him, he still had a giant impact on the world, and I want to be able to share that story because it's just something that you need to share. Like, it's important because it just made history. And it's something that, one, I love talking about. I really do. And every single time I talk about it, so many students are really surprised. It's like, wow, that's your grandfather? It's just like, yeah, it is. And so even though I haven't met him, I still feel like I'm close to him because I talk about him and I keep his legacy going as much as I can from my father and from my parents in general and just family. So.
Do you have any particular stories you want to share with us right now?
I know in elementary school and in middle school, there was this history project that we had to do based on just African American and during the civil rights movement. And we were given a topic, it's just like pick somebody during the civil rights movement or pick somebody during the time of like segregation or Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks type of thing. And I didn't want to be like everybody else who picked Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Malcolm X. I didn't want to do that. I thought, wait a second, my grandfather worked with him. Yeah. And so I immediately asked my father, it's just like, Dad, what can I talk about? Like, give me some information about him. And so he would give me as many stories as he can talking about him. He kept talking about, it's just like, oh yeah, he has like Martin Luther King's signature, and like grandma and grandpa used to like talk to him. I'm like, that's incredible. And so whenever I talked about it during school, like during those times, everybody was just like, wow, that was your grandpa? It's just like, he knew Martin Luther King? And I'm like, yeah, but that's like, I hope you're not focused just on Martin Luther King. My grandfather was a very important man. Yeah. And a lot of people, whether they know it or not, like a lot of people know who he is and realize how important he was. So.
In my research, one of the things that was, I found in almost every biography that he had been close with Martin Luther King Jr., but I couldn't find any stories written down about those encounters. I think there was some information that he had gone to school in Selma, and so I could try to like connect the dots. Catherine, do you know any of those stories?
So they did meet in Selma. And what they did do is they really got to know each other when they were first arrested together. And they were both put in the same cell, and they started to just kind of have this conversation. So they started writing out kind of their action plan on a roll of toilet paper, because that was all the paper that they had available to them. So their relationship became very intertwined in that he was very, they were very active together in a lot of things that they did, a lot of the strategy, a lot of the planning, but it was really about that shared mission and that shared goal. So that I remember, that story. It's like, okay, so of all the places for you to really start having that conversation, it was in a cell, because people didn't like what you had to say and how you had to say it. So I think for us, I think one of the stories that's not really told is how he came to leave the South and come to the West. There had been a number of attempts to quiet the messages and the momentum that was being gained. And there was a incident where he felt that his family was no longer safe. So that was the choice he made to leave. And what was funny is when he finally decided to leave, the headline in the newspaper said, "Brains is leaving Alabama." So for all of that work and all of the effort, they decided at that point, not for all the good work he was doing, not for the change that he was helping people realize, they were celebrating, now he's leaving and we don't have to worry about it anymore. So I always thought that was, I remember him saying, you know, I'd like to make the front page another way, but this is as good as any.
That's an amazing story. I love both of those stories, because I feel like, particularly the story of being in jail together. I think Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham jail, which is two white pastors trying to talk them out of doing nonviolence. I think it was also written on toilet paper.
It was.
Yeah, but we don't think about the pastors who were with him and supporting him and the kinds of like jailhouse conversations he was having. We just have this enduring legacy of him writing a letter to the pastors who didn't get it. And so I love that there's also a second piece of toilet paper that's like with pastors who got it and the ways that they were going to make the world better. I love that so much.
I'm sorry that Ken and Jennifer aren't here, because his role at Bethlehem is so important and important to me too. But it made such a difference, and it saddens me that we haven't been able to quite figure out how to keep that going, because that was very special, infected many people's lives. And it was, it's primarily a Black congregation. So that was another one of those times.
Yeah, they're dear to my heart. I encountered them because I was working on a community garden. And
yeah, I remember you doing that.
And it's frankly the roundabout way that we wound up here is all of the hours it takes to try to like plant a garden. You get to hear all these really wonderful stories. And I kept just wishing that like there was a way to share those stories in a bigger venue. And so I'm so glad that we're taking some time to be able to do that today.
Is anyone there now? Anybody full time? I'm just asking the question. I don't know the answer.
I don't know that answer in terms of pastoral care. I do know that they've had a number of interims who have helped them out.
Sometimes happens.
Yeah, they do a lot of really wonderful meals for the homeless and clothing drives, and yeah. Did any of Bishop Herzfeld's family members, did you encounter Bethlehem Lutheran?
Yeah.
Was that after your time? Do you have any stories about that congregation that you'd be willing to share?
They were little.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Catherine?
So there's, I think I can tell the story from my perspective in being, a daughter of the congregation, and my mother being kind of the organist, choir director. So it was a complete family affair in the church. But the one thing that I can definitely say about that is Bethlehem Lutheran Church was a family, and it became a family not only for us, but I think it became a sense of family for a number of people that transplanted from other parts of the country. So I'm not sure if everyone was aware that my father served as the chaplain for a number of the sports teams, notably the Golden State Warriors for a number of years.
Yeah.
And he provided spiritual guidance. So we ended up with quite a few basketball players who would, if they weren't at a game, they would be showing up on Sunday in church and becoming active members of the church community. I remember my father's passion about children, and one story I vividly remember is at one particular service. I know Aunt Jo, you were there, but there was a number of children in the audience, and my father was delivering his sermon.
I know the story.
And it was like on cue. You heard one baby cry and another baby, and they just basically were their own little choir, and everybody was trying to hush the children. And my father stopped his sermon and he says, no. He says, let them speak. He's like, they're saying something we need to hear, so don't hush them. They have the right to share and express themselves the way that they want. So he was always about everyone, no matter how small, has a voice. That's important. And I think that for me is a legacy I took away from Bethlehem and still carry with me this day, is that everybody has a voice. So I just remember that vividly, that everybody was just like so freaked out, and he was just like, stop, let them cry. It's perfectly
Especially
fine.
freaked out when he threw the bottle back to the baby.
Yes, he did. That he did do.
Then he made the speech, and I sat in the second row. I was in the second row. I didn't catch it.
Nope, you didn't.
That's pretty funny. It reminds me a little bit of some of his writings about apartheid in South Africa.
Oh, yeah.
Because one of the big things that I tried to capture in the video is he didn't have, it didn't seem that he had judgment about different ways that people would protest. He seemed to understand that people needed to get out their message, and that people might use one form of protest in one area and a different form of protest in another area, but people were united in being against racism and trying to take a stand, but that you don't have to kind of one up each other in the methods you're using. And I appreciated that as a way to both embrace people who work inside the system and outside the system, and a kind of conversation that it's a little bit more nuanced than I see sometimes.
Yeah.
So often I think there's frustration that people aren't using the exact same methods for what they're working on. Did you experience that of him, Jo?
Oh, he's asking about Bob Maynard, who was the editor of the Tribune. Marty, you ended up working there, didn't you, with Bob Maynard?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Very close. You know, the other thing, when you talked about the integration and this, he was very global. And I wish I could remember the name in my head, but you know, I'm as old as Will. So the International Black something or others, they started having international meetings. So he was influenced well beyond. His roots were in the South, but his life was different, and his judgment was different. You had to be on time to church, but otherwise he was, you know. Yeah.
I wonder if no, go ahead.
No.
Oh, I was going to ask if anyone had thoughts about the kind of the racial protests that are happening right now, if anyone had thoughts about what's going on right now.
Well, Will and people of our generation we were taught nonviolent. So we went to class to learn how to be nonviolent. So I think that's been hard.
Mhm.
You know, I think in terms of that, except that we, you know, understand. But yeah, I don't know that side of Will. If he would take a, I
was just curious.
yeah.
Catherine?
I think I can speak from my perspective and being a child of that. I would say, unlike the time 6 years ago or 4 years ago, unfortunately 2 years ago, I think for the first time, there's no longer any ambiguity about what's happening. I think prior to these incidents being very coupled together, that there was a lot of questions, there was a lot of, well, what's the real backstory? I think that may have caused people not to be as vocal and as demonstrative as they're being right now. But I think this time, in this moment, with COVID-19 going on, people are now very focused, so they're not distracted. They're very focused in. They're not, you know, running here, running there, running everywhere. So instead of attention being distracted, it was very focused. And then there's also this sense of there's no more ambiguity. It's not a matter of you're hearing about this, you know, fifth hand or sixth hand or even third hand. You're getting to see and experience this through the social media and the different vehicles that we have for information and communication. You're getting to see this kind of firsthand. So I will say that's where I think where some people were on the fence or not clear or not able to pick a position. I think for maybe the first time in a very long time, people can take a position and feel comfortable about taking it based on their own reaction and their own interpretation, not from what somebody else has told somebody else has told somebody else. So I'm
on the TV. We didn't have TV in the 60s.
It's a very different, I think it's a very different experience when you're very focused. So there wasn't a lot of distractions because you don't have a lot of things to do, mostly with the COVID-19 and this lockdown and people being, you know, sheltered in place and stay at home. So you are directly and uniquely focused. And then you're getting then to experience it without anyone else's filter. So I think I'm pained by the violence that I see. I understand it, but I'm pained by it because that's hurting someone else or causing that kind of pain or causing that kind of trauma is not good for the world. But I understand and respect the frustration and the anger and the sense of enough is enough. And I'm gonna continue to be hopeful that this is the tipping point that we've needed, where we can have the right focus and people can have the right experience to make the right internal decision for them to move things forward.
I have a story to share.
Sure.
I remember he used to bring folks over for dinner that had been tortured and beaten, for example, like Dean Fersani. And all he wanted to do after dinner was to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star on the piano. So growing up, I was thinking that this has been solved by now, that we're maybe it's deja vu. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely.
Yeah. What about you, Leanne? You got any thoughts coming from, I mean, you're the next generation, right? Do you have any thoughts about what's going on in our world?
Hannah's out there too.
Yeah, I'm with my sister right now as
Oh,
well.
good. Let's hear it.
Honestly, I have a lot of opinions on it. A lot of it, like as a Christian, a lot of it is more of like trying to be patient and not be angry about it. But as like this generation, I'm actually really angry about with the world, with everything going on. A lot of people, I feel like, who don't understand why the protests are going on are just kind of like questioning. It's just like, why are they doing this? Why is there so much violence? Why is there so much protest? I mean, all 50 states in United States of America right now are protesting. 18 other countries are protesting because of everything that's going on. And I feel like for those people who don't understand why we're doing what we're doing, as in like me, my sister, and my mother, we just recently went to a protest. It was a peaceful one. Nothing bad happened at all. But we went, and I remember one of my friends a couple of days ago, they asked me, it's just like, why are you getting involved? Like, why is this so important to you? And I feel like it's important because if this is history repeating itself, just like what my father kind of said. I don't think history should repeat itself in this kind of way, because this is violent, and a lot of people are getting hurt from it. By the end of the day, the only thing we want is justice, and the only thing we want is like everybody to be treated the same way. The whole entire title of Black Lives Matter is not saying only Black Lives Matter. That's not the point of it. The whole entire point is this key group is struggling, and they're the ones who are the key targets of when violence and pain is going around, and we should be focused on trying to make an impact and fix it. And the only way all lives are going to matter is if we fix the one mistake. And as a Christian, and as being in a family like I am right now, we need to have a lot of patience and a lot of hope, because no matter what, this is all going to come to an end, and all of this is going to go better. But right now, it's painful to watch. And it's painful to see, especially as someone who's just a freshman in college. Like, there's not much I can do, but everything that I can do, I'm willing to do it, because we need a change and we need to fix it. Because if we don't, we're just going to take 5 steps back.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is there someone else there with you, Leanne?
Yeah, my older sister.
Let's hear it.
Her older sister. That's me.
I think both on what my father and my sister touched on are exactly where our mindset is as a family right now. I think that all of these demonstrations and these protests, these sit-ins, these quote unquote die-ins that are happening in the Bay Area, people are just laying down, holding their protest signs, hoping not to get tear gassed in the face. I think all of them are exciting. It's horrifying that we have to come together over something so difficult as a community. But the fact that we're coming together at all is something to hope for, both as a Christian and just as an individual. Both me and my younger sister want to go into governmental jobs. We want to be lawyers. We want to be in the military. We want to be in like positions of structure. And I think that being able to demonstrate all of our rights and exercise them just like our grandfather would have is an exciting piece of history doing itself over. I think that as a Christian, we have to represent just as much as anyone else in our community or outside of our communities and our allies do as well, as in demonstrating how much the Lord's love transcends, as well as being as like Jesus. We are taught in our churches as youth that we're supposed to be like Jesus and we're supposed to mirror his images, and mostly they tell children that is to be quiet and patient and respectful and to dig in deep into their wisdom. But Jesus flipped tables. He confronted his people. He called his friends out. And I think that not only developing that patience and that peacefulness and that respect towards authority, but also developing those critical thinking skills of you need to confront the people who are closest to you and you need to talk with your inner circle. And I mean, I wouldn't go all the way to vandalizing property, but flipping tables in a manner of speaking is just as necessary then as it is now. So those are my thoughts on that.
Martin?
So this is Renee. So
Oh, hey, Renee.
hi. Those are my my lovely daughters. Apples don't fall too far from the tree. I think that I really do concur a lot with what everybody has said. I'm probably not as bothered by the violence as I should be, so y'all pray for me. Because I think that the focus, if we spend too much time focusing on the violence, then we don't spend enough time looking at the real problem. I also think that there are distractions in the violence, that it's not always the protesters who are out there causing all the trouble. It's people who have a whole different agenda, wanting it to be backlash and to distract from the protest. So like everybody else, nobody wants to see property vandalized. Nobody wants to see people hurt. But I really do think that the vast majority of the people that you see out there, they're not about that. They're about this change. I think what really stood out to me most recently is the unity across all kinds of people. It wasn't lost on me yesterday when we were in to know that there were signs, Filipinos for Black Lives Matter, Latinas for Black Lives Matter. Somebody that I don't even know what religion that was. I think it might have been, it had a turban in the picture, but I couldn't identify the language that were about that lives matter. And I think when we look at the systemic causes of this, it's not just the violence and the killing of Black people, it's the systems that you have forced people to live in all this time. It's the fact that people have been denied access to education, access to housing, access to living wages, access to healthcare, which is connected with your wages. So it's all of those things coming together that have disrupted communities. And I say that because we, in the work that I do, we had a giveaway once for essential needs a couple weeks ago. The girls were there. Toilet paper, paper towels, baby diapers. It drew so many people that it literally locked down all of the streets in the city of Hayward. Nobody could have seen that coming years ago. Nobody should be in search of their baby's next diaper. But that's kind of where we are. And I think this, and that's caused by COVID. You know, there were always people like that. The poor are always going to be with you. And there were those people always there, but it's compounded now. And I think that in addition to this unnecessary killing of this man on tape, kind of really fueled a lot of things. Because quite frankly, we had tape when they beat up Rodney King. Right. You know, it's not like we never seen this before. We just see it a lot more frequently now, and we see some of the parts that we wouldn't previously have seen because everybody got a cell phone. So I'm really proud that my girls are carrying on the tradition of their grandfathers. And that we just, you know, this young generation, because yesterday's event, those were high schoolers that had put it together. And the people who had the most compelling, like, words and talk were the high schoolers and the young people. It wasn't until the old folks got up there that we were like, okay, you know, God is finished and you're still talking. So I think the young will show us the way.
Yeah. Are there, Leanne kind of made me think of, by speaking kind of so well about how faith is helping people through this, do any of you have bits of the Bible that are helping you right now or in times like these that inspire you?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think now I can't probably cite it since you asked me to, but I think
If you get close, we might be able to track it
it was
down.
the verse that was in Micah that the girls used for one of their posters that talked about being humble and working and living justly. I think that one is one that kind of really spoke to me. I think just even most recently, a friend of mine did a sermon that we listened to on Sunday, and basically he was talking about, you know, how if you just stay in Proverbs with those things, it gives you short little things like, you know, a soft word turns away wrath. He said, but then, you know, if that's your only world in your experience and you never had, you know, anybody not be wrathful for you, then you don't realize that some people are living in an Ecclesiastes world, he said, where, you know, the race is not always given to the swift. And so if you're a Black man, I don't care how soft your word is with the wrong officer, it doesn't turn away wrath. And so he made a joke. He was like, how about we all just meet up in Job so that we can talk about the fact that the righteous can get something that is hurtful and harmful. And that really, it made me chuckle, but it also really encouraged me a lot because it's not an either or, it's both and. And people live in the universe that they know, but we need to learn how to listen to each other, to hear what the person is saying, not to respond. And then we need to realize that their experiences may not be exactly what our experiences are, and how do we all, you know, support each other and come. So that's really been helpful to me.
I love that. What about you, Joe? You got any Bible verses?
Did you talk? I'm sorry. Are you
Yeah,
talking?
Yeah, you got any scripture that inspires you
any
in times like these?
Oh my goodness sakes.
It's a very pastor question.
No, you know, what was it? I don't know if it was Trump yet. Who was it yesterday that used Ecclesiastes? For every time there's a season.
Yes.
I haven't. I've been in a praying space, a lot of praying. Yeah.
Do you have any, Catherine, that you want to share? Or Leanne?
No, not at this time. I don't think. Again, it's always my interpretation versus the world. So,
Yeah.
But
how about James
well,
1:17? Every good gift, every perfect gift is from above, right? The Father.
That Marty.
It's not
You're
change.
your father, Marty.
Well, I think it's been wonderful to have so many generations of the same family share stories and to share some of the wisdom that you all have. Have any other stories of Bishop Herzfeld trickled through that you think we should share with folk?
My mother used to say, there are some things you don't want to know.
That's right. I was having to sift things through.
That's the truth of every family, right? Yeah, the gift of having Bishop Herzfeld having lived in a time when not everything was recorded is hopefully just the best sermons are the ones that we have, and just the best lectures are the ones that we have, right? Because, you know.
But he did right. He did right. Yeah, no, he really did right. I just want to make sure that I thank Megan for yet one more. This woman's interesting. I'm going to tell a story on her, even though Mark Carlson I know is on here. I don't know who else is. But Megan is a historian, and she pokes around. And she poked around a few years ago on the girls and Barney know Chuck, and found out some work that we had done some years ago, and the whole world know about it. And now this time she poked around in my life with Will Herzfeld, and she didn't know that, but I saw this thing on Facebook, and I wrote her a note and said, I know him. Need help. So I want to thank you for being a historian and getting those stories that some of us forget that need to be told, and doing them through your lens is very helpful. You don't need to find my name in any more of these. And I'm grateful for this reunion.
Yes.
Of together, and to be able to hear the Renomom stories again. So thanks.
Yeah.
We'll be in touch.
Yeah,
After we get through this pandemic.
That's right.
I'm sheltering in place. Are you all sheltered in place? I am.
Yeah. I'm grateful for everyone's time too. I know that some folk need to drop off, and so I just want to offer anyone who would like to say some kind of get the last word on this an opportunity.
Mhm. Yeah. So a lot of family members used to go by the church, so I say go to church.
Go to church. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. One of the lectures from Holden, Bishop Herzfeld took a very long time to make sure everyone knew that unless you know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. And so I'm gonna commend to everyone that you check out some of those lectures on the Holden Village archive, and I'll put the link up to that as well. My thanks again to everyone who has joined us. It's really been an honor to have this many generations of Herzfelds chatting with us. And if you want to join us again next week, we have a diverse panel of LGBTQ pastors. I believe Lenny Duncan is going to be moderating. And I'm going to change my clothes really quick because there's a march from City Hall to the Castro. And so that's where I'll be headed next, but I'll have all the voices of inspiration from you guys traveling there with me. Thank you so much, everyone.
Take care. Be safe, everybody.
Enjoy the feast of Bishop Herzfeld on June 9th, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.